SpotlightMediaStudios.com. Welcome to Education Unfiltered. Here is Mary Stucco.
Hello, this is Mary Stucco with Education Unfiltered, where we talk all things higher ed. And today I'm really excited to be joined by Laura Woyach, who works as a professor at Santa Barbara City College. Welcome, Laura. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me. This is really cool.
Thank you. Well, Laura and I met about a month ago or so at a symposium that was comprised of all, colleges, university professors from all over the country. And Laura is just an amazing, fascinating person. And so I wanted to bring her on the show. So, Laura, can you just tell me a little bit, about, you and your path and your background?
So I am a professor of accounting. I got into accounting. I always jokingly say I started my accounting career when I was 6 years old because my dad took me to the FBI and we did a tour of the FBI.
Oh my goodness.
And I was adamant that I was going to work for the FBI one day. And I actually I had some great contacts that helped me through high school about, just making sure I stayed on a STEM track and heavy math and science. And, I graduated with a college prep and was going there, and I started looking at what was I going to do with the FBI? And accounting kind of stood out, and I was like, I'm really good with numbers, which ended up making me take an accounting class in high school. Mm-hmm. And then I went off to college and pursued accounting, and really I never really deviated from the accounting track, literally ever. I was very lucky and had amazing accounting professors in college. I attended Georgia Southern University down in Statesboro, Georgia, in the Deep South. Mm-hmm. And I stayed that route, and then I jokingly, and I tell my students this all the time, and then somewhere in the late 90s, I smoked marijuana, and that killed my FBI dream because it was illegal. You couldn't do that. And I did not pass a polygraph because I lied about smoking marijuana. So
do they really ask that question?
They really did. They asked me if I had ever done drugs, and I was like, no. And apparently my heart rate went off the charts. And they called me 3 days later and said, "Ma'am, you failed your polygraph." And I thought, well, I guess I'll never be an FBI agent, but I can still go into accounting, right?
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So I tell my students, and it's kind of funny because I also tell them, had you told me when I was, 18, 19, 20, sitting in those college chairs that when you were 45, Laura, you would be a college professor, I would have looked at you and said you were not right with the world, and I was never going to be a college professor.
Right.
But, I love accounting. And I worked in many different industries, from banking to telecommunications. I thought the dream was working in a high-rise building in downtown Atlanta with a 2-hour commute and that wearing a suit every day. That's what you strive for.
Sure.
And then I realized that's not really that great, and it was horrible.
I hear you, because I grew up in Michigan in the Midwest, and I thought that was going to be in downtown Chicago. So I totally understand as a young person that's got to be your goal.
That's your goal, right? That's where you've been taught. This is what you want to achieve.
Exactly.
And then I got there, and I was like, this is awful. This is not at all what I want to do. And so I finagled, and kind of like I said, I went in many different directions. And I realized education was something I didn't figure out in my undergrad. I was quite the partier. Mm-hmm. About my senior year, I was like, oh, this is actually important. I need to pay attention. Mm-hmm. And from there, really, I graduated. I went and lived in Washington, D.C., had this really wonderful life and career, and I was single, and it was fun. And I did that for 2 years, and I went, okay, the real world sucks. I'm going back to school. Mm-hmm. And so I went and got my master's in Savannah, Georgia, at Georgia Southern University again, only at just a different campus. And I found the power of education. I got really good at it. I graduated magna cum laude in accounting still, with a master's of business administration in accounting. And it was at that point that I ended up meeting a boy of all things who took me to Santa Barbara, California. That's where he was from. And so I moved cross country and left everything I knew in the South behind. And I've lived in Santa Barbara now 17 years, working my way through the corporate sort of quote-unquote life cycle all the way up to CFO. I was the chief financial officer for Santa Barbara Superior Court. And I found teaching quite by accident. My brother was living on my sofa, and Santa Barbara's really expensive. And so I was like, you have to get a job. So I started looking for jobs for him. And in looking for jobs for him, I found an ad for a local career technical college here in Santa Barbara. Actually, that's no longer open. But they needed a nighttime professor to teach accounting. And I was like, well, shoot, that'll keep me off the streets at night. And it'll make me some extra money. And let's give it a shot. I'm qualified. I have my master's. And, I can teach accounting. Come on. And I'll never forget when I tried it. I go into this interview, and I was really honest. I'd never taught before. I had a master's. I was working, at that point for approximately 7 or 8 years in the accounting career field and actually been an active accountant. I had sat for my CPA, but I never actually wanted to work as a CPA, so I never practiced as a CPA. So it was very, it was very interesting because I kind of thought, I have no experience. Why are they going to let me teach? This is kind of crazy. And after I got out of the interview, he goes, so here's your textbook, and we'll see you on Monday night. I was like, this is a Thursday. I was like, excuse me? He's like, we're on chapter 7. I was like, oh my God, I have the job. And so I went in, and I literally, that was all I was given. I was given a textbook. I was told they were on chapter 7, and I was going to teach the class on the following Monday, which was literally 4 days later.
So it sounds like you were jumping in for another instructor who somehow couldn't continue teaching.
I think they bailed. I think, and this happens actually kind of a lot, I found, in education. They think they want to teach, and then they get in front of students, and they're like, oh my God, I have to talk. And they freeze.
They're terrifying. They ask questions.
Right. I think that's what happened. And so that's how I found education and teaching. It was really by accident. But that, and I still know the man who hired me, and I am forever grateful to him because it changed my life forever. I went on to do part-time adjunct teaching for 12 years. And it was when I got the CFO job. It was really funny. When I got the CFO job, everybody, like everyone from my mom to coworkers to friends asked, well, will you still keep teaching? You're making plenty of money. And I was like, well, do you play golf when you get a better job? That's my fun activity. I love teaching. You like playing golf. That's how I equate it.
Right.
And they kind of looked at me like I was crazy. What are you talking about?
Yeah, because adjuncts are not known for being well paid either.
Right. This is just fun extra, vacation money or dinner money or whatever. And I said, no, of course I'll keep teaching. I love teaching. Oh my God, don't take that away from me. That's how I blow off steam at night.
Yeah.
Truly. It really is. Mm-hmm. So that's where I landed, and I remember I was teaching. At that point, I was up to teaching almost 4 nights a week, I think, which was a lot, and I had a full daytime job. So I was I was putting in 12, 14, 16-hour days. Mm-hmm. And I it was wearing on me, but then actually I got diagnosed, and I was, I had a lump in my breast, and I had to undergo, a minor surgery and some treatment and stuff. And so because of that, I was I really thought about life, and I was like, and I went to my to the courts and told them the situation, and I needed some time off and just to take care of this medically. And unfortunately, I didn't realize at the time when I had signed on to be a CFO, I had waived my right to Family Medical Leave Act. So I didn't have the time to take, because I was considered an essential, because of the level at being the CFO, I'm an essential, critical senior management.
Oh, I didn't
And
realize
so
that was a thing.
I didn't either. And I remember, and they were like, remember you signed that? And I was like, oh yeah, I got it. And they were right. I had. And so they're like, you don't have the time. We'll give you like, a couple weeks, but we can't give you like a 3-month leave or whatever. And that's what my doctors had wanted me to do.
Sure.
So I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I don't like this job. Like, it was kind of funny. I'll never forget, about a month into getting the CFO job, I was sitting in my office and I thought, I'm 33 years old. This is it. Like, this is what I'm going to do for the next 30 years until I retire. Like, oh my God, kill me in my face.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do this. This is awful. And I thought, I got to figure out something. And I started really thinking about it. And then when my doctors were like, we need you to take, a leave of absence, and we need you to focus on your health. And I went and talked to the CEO of the courts and told him that. And they kind of just didn't want to work with me. They were like, sorry, like, we'll this is like what we can do. And it was very minimal. And I thought, you know what I love the most in the world? I love when I go to teach, because whatever yucky stuff happened to me in the day, whether it was with work or family or just whatever, when I walk into that classroom and I get into my groove and I'm teaching and we get into these great conversations with my students, it just all melts away.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, I want to do that forever. How do I do that forever? So I started researching, and I found a university down in LA that had teamed up actually with UCLA, and it was through it's a for-profit, and it was a doctorate of business administration in management. And it was that's what I liked, is I really wanted in person. I didn't want to do online. And so I said, you know what? And I'll never forget. I called my mom and I said, so I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is the bad news is I've got some health stuff, but it's going to be fine. I'm going to be okay. Don't worry about it. And the bad news is I quit my 6-figure salary job as a CFO. And I said, but the better news is I'm going to go get my doctorate, and I'm going to go back to school. I already enrolled. I'm going to start, in like 2 weeks or whatever. And she was like, wait, what? You're sick? You quit your job and you're going back to school? And I said, yes, exactly. And I've never felt better.
Yeah.
And then I called my deans at all my part-time teaching jobs, and I said, I need every class you can give me because I don't know how I'm going to pay rent. And I tell my students, it's like, I understand. Like, I've been a college student for 13 years. I get your stress. Like, I get you've got 700 things happening at once. You've got family. You've got chaos. You've got crisis. You've got sickness. You're poor. I've been there. Like, I can walk your walk and talk your talk. I feel your pain, but trust me, like, it's worth every ounce. Yeah. And I tell people, like, the best thing I ever did for myself, you can take away everything I have, but you can never take away my education. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of throws a whole thought where some people say, yeah, those who can't teach. I think that definitely shows that, nope, some people just choose this route because they love it. It's not that they can't do anything else, for sure.
Right.
Oh, my gosh, that's amazing.
So that's kind of how I found it. And you know what? It's funny. I was just, I'm doing this kind of an interesting thing. I'm doing it's like group therapy, sort of. It's like a weekly conversation with the same group of people, and it's kind of therapy, kind of social, kind of whatever. And they asked me last week, what do I cherish? And it was kind of funny. Like, I thought for a second. And my answer was, I cherish my students. Like, my students, I jokingly say to people, like, I don't have any kids, but I get 200 new ones every semester. Because that's how I feel. Like, they're my kids. Like, I cheer them on, and when they get accepted, or when they transfer and they get, or they graduate, or they get a job, or they get, a scholarship, or whatever their successes are in their life, and they come and they share them with me, like, those are my successes. And I teach a lot of empowerment, and like, if I have successful students, that means I'm successful. And so, I treat them, I tell them, I don't care if you're, I got students that are in their 60s, I got students that are in their teens, like, you're all my kids. Yeah. It doesn't really matter how old you are.
I agree. And that's something special about teaching in a city college like you do, or community college, same thing.
Right.
It is, you get such a diverse group. And I think that's what's really fun, and I love it. And you probably see this too, where a lot of times, especially the moms, where their kids finally go to college, and they're like, "Well, heck, I've always wanted to go to college. I'm going now too," because now they're kind of on their own, and that's the stuff that you get to see them really start to do what they want to do. And you're right. It's so exciting to watch people, and they all have different paths. And that's also exciting because some of them don't want 4-year degree. Some of them only want like a certification. Some of them, are just back because I just always wanted to learn more about this. So.
Right. Oh, I have a 75-year-old man, bless his heart. He's had 5 careers, and he's a vet within the military, was a professor at University of Oregon, and retired in Santa Barbara. And just comes, he's like, I just want to learn accounting. So he's getting his accounting certificate, and I think he's almost he's got 1 class left.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And he's so fantastic, and I love him. And it's like he's just like, I just need to keep learning. It keeps me going. And I'm like, man, if everyone did this, I said we'd all live a lot healthier, longer lives. That's for darn sure.
I agree. So, just as a little takeaway, what is the one thing, if you hear, because a lot of people have been, doing a lot of self-evaluations and making changes. So what would be like some pieces of wisdom you could pass on for people thinking about going back to school or making a career change? What would you say to them?
I think, and I'm going to steal it from my mom because it's the wisest thing she ever told me. And it's very simple. And I went to her when I was thinking about before I actually enrolled in my doctorate. And I was thinking, and I'd been thinking about it, and I was trying to figure out, was I going to go the accounting route or the management route? And I hemmed and hawed on this for like 5 years. And I wasn't really making any headway. And I went to my mom and I said, Mom, what do you think about me going back to school? Like, it would be a big change. I couldn't work a full-time job. It's going to cost me money, blah, blah. I laid it all out. And she said, Laura, it's like this. You can either be 35 with your doctorate or 35 without your doctorate. Which one do you want to be?
Yeah, I think that's awesome advice. When you think about it that way, one way or another, you're getting older. And
I was just like, okay, then. Well, thank you very much for that advice. You've helped me make my decision, if you put it that blatantly. And I think, if there's people, like I get students all the time who are just like, I don't know. I don't think I want to transfer. I don't know if I can do 2 more years or if I can complete a 4-year degree. And I think I always tell them, you will never, ever in your entire life wake up any day and say, God, I'm really mad I have that degree. Like, you're never going to do that. And the way financial aid has come around and the access and the availability of money, I tell students, like, you can't say anymore, I can't afford college. And I think we're moving to someday I think in the not too distant future of student loans being forgiven and being reduced and because to stay competitive on a global level, we need more education. And it's becoming so blatantly obvious as we've coming out of this pandemic and seeing what's happening in other countries and stuff. And my students I can't tell you how many students are like, I'm going to transfer. I'm going to go get my 4-year. And thank you, Laura. And I just, I think I try, and I think if we could all, as higher education instructors and professors and adjunct faculty, however you interact with students, encourage them to continue their education. That's how we got to be where we're at. And I don't make the most money in the world, but I get 4 months off a year, and I love my life, and I get to go to work every day happy. And we got there because we got education.
Right.
And I tell them that, and they're like, well, all right. And they continue, they're like, okay, yeah, you're right. So I don't think it's hard. I just think some people, they come from families that don't open up those doors for them, and they just don't know. Yeah. And I think, like, that's part of our job, is just to let them know, like, it's not as hard as you think it is. And it's a lot easier, and it's very accessible, and you can do it. If you've done it this far, you can continue.
Yeah, and I know in Michigan we've developed, certain scholarships or certain programs for people, especially like those are returning back to school, where the state helps pay. And I know I was just out in San Francisco. I told you, a few weeks ago, like even like in San Francisco, I don't know if it's an all California thing for a lot of people. Like the college is free. Do you have something like that going on? Okay.
Yeah, so the state of California has what's called the Promise Grant, and it makes all 2-year education free. So to get your associate's degree, it's free. Doesn't matter where you go. Basically, I think pretty much any community college, even university that offers an associate's degree, you can apply for the Promise Scholarship, and it's paid for by the state of California. So in California, we have up to and through an associate's degree free education. they haven't come up with a 4-year free education yet. In Georgia, though, we have what's called the Hope Scholarship, which is funded by the lottery. And if you graduate high school with a B average, and it's not a 3.0, it's a B average because B is different in different school districts, and then you maintain that B average at a public university, the state of Georgia will pay for your education.
That's great. Yeah, and I think most states have something. So that's something important for people to remember, as if, they're just thinking about taking a class here or there, that they can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Laura, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It was so awesome to hear your voice and hear your story. You're just an amazing person. This is Mary Stucco with Education Unfiltered. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.